Statistics overtook logic, which, you know, is just very much my brand. Hello friends, I could not be looking more forward to this video. A lot of my content tends to be really self-reflective. So I'll talk about my childhood favorites, or rereading my questionable favorites from just a couple years ago, thinking about authors I've hated before and trying them again, looking back on years of TBRs, reacting to old videos, talking about videos that I've canceled. And today I'm going to talk about books that I almost read in certain videos. Perhaps the books I should have read. We're going to talk through 5 videos, how the videos went, what they were meant to be, what they turned out to be, the books that I read in them or didn't, and then I'm going to right my wrongs and pick a book or 2 from each video and read them in the vlog portion. I'm going to go through some old footage too. It's going to be an interesting time. So the first 2 of the 5 videos I want to go through were from a time before reading vlogs were really a thing. I feel like people who are newer to BookTube don't realize that reading vlogs, the abundancy of reading vlogs, is a relatively new phenomenon in the past couple years. I would say 2014 through 2018, you didn't really see a lot of actual reading. We talked about the books that we'd read, we recommended books, talked about all the books we wanted to read, talked about the books that we were buying. The only real vlogs came up during big community events where everybody was reading for a particular, you know, like a readathon. So prior to 2018, there were a ton of videos that everybody was putting out, myself included, where we were just building a TBR, talking about what we wanted to read. And sometimes you didn't always follow through with that, especially with me and the more creative ways that I was building TBRs. Or if the TBR was fulfilled, you didn't really see it until end of the month and a wrap up. And TBRs were also more so, here's my established TBR shelf. And then for me, it was like, let's find a concept to pick the books that I'm going to read from my already existing TBR shelf. And so the TBR building itself wasn't done to its fullest for me, and not the way that I would currently do a video like these. Let's just get into it. The number 1 is husband buys my books. In this video, I had Rob go book shopping with me in a bunch of different ways. We did a little unboxing, and I ended up with 5 books. I haven't read any of them. Because the thing about that video wasn't building a TBR. It was just my husband buys me some books. I buy myself books all the time and I never read them. If I had done that video concept post 2018 when I coined secret TBRs, building a TBR and reading that TBR in a video, I would have done this concept completely differently. The goal is not to read all 5 of those books and complete the challenge, but I am going to read one to right my wrongs, and that's Breathing Underwater. Video number 2 is My DNA Chooses My TBR. Now, I have a lot to say about this video that I'm going to cover more later, including footage and the TBR itself and how my own building of TBRs has evolved. Essentially, I took a DNA test, looked at all the countries that I was from, and then looked at my TBR shelf and picked like an author from each of the countries that I'm from. And I did read most of them by the end of the month, but it really did not fulfill the challenge in the way that I would do if I were doing that video current day. So I actually have 3 books on their way to me right now that are from Irish authors from the exact town that my ancestry is. So I'm really looking forward to checking those out and talking through some different things with you, including how my DNA has changed? Question mark? Video number 3 is reading booktuber favorites. I do this video every year. I love it so much. I always end up with amazing books and terrible books. The series has definitely evolved over time, but I read between 5 and 20 books in the first month of the year that booktubers included in their favorites from the year prior. I don't think I would change anything about how I do those videos. I love them and I never know how the books are going to go, obviously, until I read them. But the very first year I did it, statistics overtook logic, which, you know, is just very much my brand. This specific one has really haunted me over the years because I made a rule for myself that if a book showed up in more than 2 booktubers videos, then I had to read it. And it was based on like booktubers who have similar taste to me, but from my friend Natasha's video, who you could argue has the most similar taste to me of anybody on BookTube. Because of that rule, I ended up picking her 2 romance books. And that was just objectively the wrong decision, not just because I hated the books, but because we all knew that it was just the wrong decision. I can't say that I know I'm going to love these two books by the end of it, but these very much feel more in my wheelhouse than what I actually read. So we've got A Heart and a Body in the World and Hollow Kingdom. Next up, we have a video series again I do every year, and that is reading the Goodreads Choice Awards in a specific category. All of the nominees. The first 2 years I did thrillers, 2 years I did horror. Not sure what I'm doing this year. And the thing about these videos is they always go the way that they should. I follow the rules, I do everything I'm supposed to do, I end up with favorite books by the end. It's a really good time every time. I always set out to read the top 10 nominees. There's usually 15 to 20, but the final 10, the top 10, I try to read in like 2 weeks, and I always succeed. But there's always a couple books every year that elude me because I don't have the time or the interest sometimes that would have me successfully completing the entire 15 or 20, which is never my goal. So it's fine. This one doesn't haunt me the same way that some of these other selections do. But in 2019, one of the only books that stopped me from completing the entire list was The Chain. I have a few reasons for choosing this right now. It's been relentlessly recommended to me since I didn't pick this for that video. I also am considering an Adrian McKinty for a Literally Dead book club pick coming up soon, which is my mystery thriller horror book club. And this has just really been calling to me. It sounds really fun and fast-paced and wild, and I just think I would really like it. So I'm really excited to read this author for the first time with you in this context. Then lastly, we have, this is gonna sound like this is getting so convoluted, but we have my canceled videos video. So let me try to navigate this. I do a video once in a while where I talk about the videos that I've canceled, the TBRs that I never even started. And I talk about those video concepts with you, usually 5, and then I pick a book from each failed video concept and I read it for that vlog. So I'm somewhat completing the failed video concept, much like I'm doing in this video. But through doing those vlogs, I talk about entire TBRs, 5-book TBRs. So I end up having like 25 books to choose from, and I only pick one from each stack of 5 books. So then I'm left with 20 books that I could have picked, not only for that original failed concept, but then for the canceled videos vlog itself. And there's a couple standout books that people have been very vocal that they're disappointed in me for not choosing. So the first book I have is The Water Cure. This was originally a canceled video where I was going to read a bunch of books that were custom recommended to me by publishers, authors, and the community as a whole. And the other one is 7 Days, which I almost read in a canceled video where I was reading books that had been sent to me unsolicited. With that said, the books that I ended up reading for those failed video concepts were fantastic books. So I don't regret the way that the videos went, but I feel very strongly that completing these books will be righting my wrongs. And then one more book I'm going to read for this video. I don't feel like it needs to be like video number 6, but we'll go with it. It is When I Reread My Childhood Favorites. I have one specific friend who's relentless about the fact that I chose the wrong Sabrina book, because in my, I think it was 9th grade favorites, I had a selection of Sabrina the Teenage Witch books, and I picked one that was a fine read, but one of my options is about a game. It's called Witchopoly. And if a book about a board game and witches is not my brand, like, I don't know what is. So I'm sure I won't have a lot to say about this, but I do want to include it in the vlog to officially right my wrong. So that's everything that I've got planned for this video besides the books that are on their way in the mail to me. If you feel like there is a book that you have been harboring feelings about me not reading in a vlog, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Please be nice. I will be doing this series again and righting more wrongs, because clearly there's a lot of them. He's gonna buy me 5 books from 5 different places.
So this is from the used bookstore you regularly. Yeah.
I feel like he might get overwhelmed easily, and so I want to direct him kind of to certain areas.
It's a lot more overwhelming in this store, actually. This seems about right. I recognize some of these books.
The Gargoyle. If I were to rate my videos the way that I rate books, I would give this one a 4 out of 5. I feel like it was fast-paced, it was quick, it was engaging. I think it could have been a full 5-star video if not reading the entire books for the video, because that's not what it was supposed to be. But maybe if I had read the first chapter of each one. I don't consider the video a fail at all, but that type of video is done with no accountability, no plan for when you're going to read the book. And so I never read the books. The thing also is there wasn't a clear intention of the types of books that, or what the goal of the video even was supposed to be. So from my perspective, without vocalizing it, it was kind of like, can my husband pick out things that I would pick myself? Or does he know my taste? Would he gravitate towards the same things as me? And I think if you asked him, he was kind of doing the video in a way that was picking things that I might not pick myself. Which is how we ended up with, you know, the 15th book in a detective series, a gargoyle book, a fairy book. Oh, and The Chemist, of course. 2 of those have been donated, 2 of them have been given to friends, and then I left with this one, Breathing Underwater. I felt like I should head back to Ted's for some used book shopping, just as some nice nostalgia for the video. But this is the one that was already on my TBR and he so kindly picked it. Rob's always such a good sport, and I'm sure he's harboring no ill will towards me for not picking up the books that he selected for me. Let's go shopping. So Ted's has been around since 1977. It's one of my favorite local bookstores to shop at. The women who work there are incredible. I was just browsing and it was funny how many books that I saw that I'm reading for this video. The Chain was there. 7 Days was there. I also came across The Water Cure, Hollow Kingdom. They were all there. I was even confronted by The Gargoyle and almost picked it up again to right my wrongs. I wasn't super successful at the used bookstore, but I grabbed this called The Man in a Maze, which I can't even explain why I picked up. Anyway, I've now gotten pretty deep into Breathing Underwater, and I can tell you it's Australian, which I didn't even realize, and this is definitely something I should have read in 2018. Not that I'm not enjoying it now, but I was just looking at my shelves and I was like, this was so my vibe. Like, tell me these don't all evoke the same feeling. And it's got this same kind of melancholy vibe that I was reading at the time, where we're following a teenager dealing with like tough things in life, but they're also coming of age, and sometimes they have a little side romance. But the writing of this very much feels like something I've read a lot before. Just this slow, small town of a girl getting to know herself. My expectations of this book is that someone's going to die. I don't want to reread the synopsis, but I think it had something to do with dealing with death. And the synopsis talks about her twin brother a lot. So I was just assuming he's gonna die. They went surfing and she almost died. They went to a party and her best friend got assaulted. And I keep like waiting for like the big scene to happen, but maybe those are like the big scenes. And that is the things that the book is like gonna have her working through. But I'm assuming we're gonna have a big death come soon, and I really feel close to the characters already, so I'll probably cry. Okay, final thoughts. Of all the books, since I'm reading so many for this video, this doesn't need a huge explanation, review. I think it's the only why I have for this video, right? So I'm gonna say what I often say, you know, as a woman in her 30s who occasionally still reads YA. This was fine. It didn't do a lot for me, but I can recognize that it was good. If I had read this in 2018, I would have given it a 4. Current day, I'm giving it like, I don't know, a 3.5, 3.75. It was really interesting seeing how every character dealt with their grief differently. Grief is a topic that I seek out a lot in books, and I think there's a lot of characters you won't agree with the decisions that they make, which makes for an interesting read. A lot of this book, she spends it with this boy, and they kind of enable each other into partying and a lot of drug use. It went where I was expecting it to. It had all the conversations I was expecting it to. This was on my TBR. I'm glad to have finally read it because now it won't be staring at me on my shelves for years anymore. And I would definitely, absolutely recommend it to its target age demographic and to anybody who enjoyed that stack of books I showed earlier that I would call pretty good comp titles for this. So that's that. Video number 2. And my DNA is going to tell me what countries my family originates from. So this is some of my family. British and Irish, 17.9%. I think think I would have thought that was higher because I feel like I had British and Irish on both sides. The thing that makes the most sense to me would be based on this thing right here that tells me when my family was in that area. Okay, first of all, that video gets a 1 star from me. It was pretty chaotic. I was building my TBR throughout the video, didn't end up reading anything, didn't even end up like committing to anything by the end. I just talked about a whole lot of books and it was kind of a big mess. I did ask for recommendations at the end and those came in, and then it got even more kind of confusing of what direction I should take it. For my content, there are 2 different ways to go about a video titled blank chooses my TBR. Either it's something like the Wordle video where I play Wordle and I end up picking something off my TBR that fits with the Wordle word. Or there's this one where it was a weird book and based on the prompts in the book, I picked things off of my TBR shelf. The other option is like my Enneagram chooses my TBR, in which I have no control over the books that are going to show up. I look at all these online quizzes, same with my zodiac sign chooses what I read. For these, I'm being 100% guided by the internet and I don't have my own influence on it. And any of these videos that we're talking about, I could do it the opposite way. So I could have done Wordle chooses my TBR, and I could have taken that word and I could have picked the absolute best book to fit for the challenge. I would have to go to the library, the bookstore, do some research, and I could fulfill that differently. And then for my zodiac sign, like rather than finding things on the internet and being guided, I could say, okay, well, here's a red book on my TBR, and I'm gonna read that because I'm a fire sign. I think you get what I'm saying. Like for the Enneagram video, I could have read books just with 8 in the title. So for each different type of video like that, I have to choose how I want to do it. For the DNA one, even though it didn't end up being a reading vlog because these types of videos weren't done at this time, but I went about it in that way, which was picking things I already had on my shelves. So I was talking about how, hey, I'm like kind of from Russia and I have this book set in Russia. That was it. Or like, I'm kind of from Poland and this book that's becoming a movie soon is set in Poland. Like I was already probably gonna read it. So I'm just gonna read that this month, and like that counts towards this. There wasn't even gonna be a follow-up video is the whole thing. I did end up reading some books that month. One of them was just like about mermaids because I'm like from Ireland. I'm pretty sure I even said like, I'm just gonna read The Death of Mrs. Westaway and that counts for my United Kingdom ancestry. At this point, what I want to do is I want to read 3 books from a specific part of Ireland. Because what's crazy is 23andMe, I guess when I originally did the video, it was like a 10-year-old company. Now it's a 15-year-old company. And the more people who submit their DNA and the more understanding we get of like different, you know, groups of people, parts of the world, lines of ancestry, the more specific your own ancestry will evolve in the app itself. So at this point, it's not that my DNA has changed, but it's that it's gotten more specific. My highest percentage was French and German, and it was closely followed by UK and Ireland. But now, if I look at my results, UK and Ireland is the highest. And I can actually go in now and see the part of Ireland that my highest percentage is from. So I am like 20% from a place called County Mayo in Ireland. I've definitely read Irish authors before, but never from a specific location because I didn't know it. And I guess there are a bunch of towns in Mayo, like a lot, Bangor, Ballycastle, Cong, Hollymount. I don't know how to pronounce any of these. And if any of you are from Ireland, specifically County Mayo, or do you just call it Mayo? I'm sure you will correct me on things that I'm saying. But so then I Googled authors from Mayo and I found Sally Rooney. I was so surprised to see that there is an author from there that I've heard of. She wasn't on my TBR. In fact, I posted a poll to my channel members asking which book of hers I should pick up, and most of the comments told me not to. So I had no idea she was so divisive, or if it's based on my reading taste. People think that I won't enjoy her work. I don't know, but I couldn't ignore including like a modern prolific author that I found from the same place that I'm from. So we're reading a Sally Rooney. And then obviously, as the goal was like historic kind of stuff, I couldn't just choose that. So then I found one called Historic Tales of Mayo. And then thirdly, this one just popped up randomly, so I had to grab it because I think this is a rabbit. I'm not totally sure, and if it's not, don't tell me. But it's called A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing, and I've definitely heard of it before. I actually just organized my shelves to take like an Instagram picture of the Sally Rooney amongst the green and blue books. It's a thing that I do on Instagram sometimes, but I just realized I don't know what cover my library has. I just assumed it would be the green and blue one. So if it's just the all green one, then I've done that for no reason. So anyway, let's go grab all those books and then I'll talk them through a little bit. Okay, the good news, it was the green and blue one. The other good, that was Liam. The other good, he's on a scooter. He's not just that fast. Other good news, got some other library holds in that I'm very excited about. The bad news is,
I'll go get the mail for you.
I already got the mail.
Put on your helmet.
The bad news is only one of the two books straight from Mayo arrived. So I'll start on this one and Normal People. I don't know about the other one. I think maybe I'll grab the audiobook. And what's funny about Normal People is also on this post, people were talking about how some people don't like it and I might not like it because it's very Irish. And they didn't even know that like part of the reason, the whole reason I'm reading this is because of its Irishness. So I just think that's very interesting that people are bringing up like the Irish humor and writing style as something that doesn't appeal to a lot of people. And I'm just interested to know if I dig it or not. People are saying that because there's a lack of quotation marks that they found it annoying to read. Okay, and you guys get the exclusive of what I do to my Instagram pictures. So here's the before and here's the after. Don't tell anyone. Okay, here's what I'm up to. I am organizing my bookshelves. I'm currently reading this physically. I'm liking it. I'm probably a third of the way through. And then I'm tandem reading this, Historic Tales of Mayo. I've read the first couple stories. And now I'm currently doing reading sprints on Erin's channel. And I want to have an audiobook going while I'm cleaning and organizing. So I'm going to get the, whatever it was called, Half-Formed Girl book. I listened to the sample and it's read pretty slowly. So I'm going to listen to it on like double speed. And I have a feeling I can get through all books, all three of the books today. So I didn't update you much, or did I update you at all while I was reading these? I just didn't feel like there was much content to like pause and take a minute and talk through with you. But by the end of it, I'm giving them both 4 stars. And now I'm 2/3 of the way through my Irish experience. This didn't, you know, give me a better understanding of the Irish experience. I don't feel like closer to my roots in any sort of way, which isn't the intent of the book. So like, that's fine. If I had read this in 2018, would I have given it 4 stars? I don't know. I probably would have given these more like 3 stars because they're not particularly fascinating, but they're both very good. Obviously they're completely different genres. So let's pick one to cover. Normal People, I'm trying to think of other books that I've read that have 2 characters who like are involved in a relationship, but it's not a romance, because that's definitely not something that I gravitate towards or like try to pick up. But Why We Broke Up came to mind, and like The Wife maybe by Meg Wolitzer. Tell Me How You Really Feel is technically a romance but doesn't feel romantic. It's just like about their dynamics as their relationship evolves. Oh, and then also maybe Love, Rosie, which I didn't like the movie, but I liked the book. And also Birthday by Meredith Russo. These are the things that are coming to mind for me that follow a couple throughout like years and issues, I guess. Why I think this worked for me is they're both very fully realized people. It's hard to cover the plot. I don't think I'll watch the show because it's just like their dynamic over the years. They're flawed individuals. They seem very genuine. They're insecure and there's a lot of miscommunication in their relationship, but they're trying so hard, and they, I think, put a lot of their own insecurities or assumptions onto each other. I really can't remember if I read the plot to you, but we have Connell and Marianne, and they're like together but not together and with other people and critiquing each other's like relationships with other people, but like wanting to be open to them dating other people. And I think they think they're a lot more mature than they are. So they'll have these thoughts and conversations about like, oh, well, it's fine if you go off and you want to date someone else. Like, I want you to experience that. And when the other person says the same thing to them, they just assume that they're coming from the same place. But they both like have feelings that they're not really sharing or not comfortable sharing. What I really liked about it is they have a lot of just matter-of-fact conversations. It's not, I really hope people don't go into this thinking that it's romance, because it doesn't feel like this passionate relationship. It's just a lot of dialogue where they're talking about their relationship from like almost an outside perspective. Like, is this the best way for us to be happy? Should we explore other avenues? Like, should we be kissing right now? Like, let's think logically about it. It almost feels like a voyeuristic experience, like you're witnessing these conversations and scenarios that you shouldn't be. I don't know that I would read from Sally Rooney again. It's one of those books that I feel like I won't really think about ever again. And then this one, Historic Tales of Mayo, was really interesting because it covered like general experiences of Ireland and of Mayo specifically, just broadly, things that affected everyone. There was conversations about famine and, you know, what people were eating, the choices that they had to make, the decisions that they did have, and like how everything came into play, like government wise and control. And then they were also very just like personal stories, very small stories about just like going to the pub, and this, he was talking about like this one woman he sees at the pub every time and the connection that they have. And I just think it did a fantastic job of showing how large and vast and diverse like experiences can be within the country, but it also just felt so small town and cozy. It was equal parts educational and personal memoir stuff. There was some poetry in here. It was just really, really nice. Not always nice necessarily. There's naturally a lot of hardship to get through, and I don't know, I just thought it was well done. And now let's find out what A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing is even about, because I don't know. I just started the audiobook. It's only 200 pages. It's a story of a young woman's relationship with her brother and the long shadow cast by his childhood brain tumor. Okay, so I'm not loving the audiobook of A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing by Emir McBride, even though it's narrated by the author, and I think that's great, especially for the authentic like experience that I'm looking for. But there's something about the cadence of this. It doesn't look like poetry, but it reads like poetry. Like, a lot is rhyming, and she even like sings songs part of it on the audiobook, which is great, but I can't listen to it faster than 1x speed. It's just not conducive to that experience at all, because you lose the cadence of it. And I just can't function like listening to an audiobook at 1x speed. It doesn't work for me and my mind, because I would read it physically 3 times that fast. So I'm hoping that the physical book works. Hello. I've actually completed this video at this point, and I had to come back and wrap this up and do a quick little chat about it here. This is the most taxing thing that I've ever read, both in content and in writing style. I'm also not going to be rating it. Reading comprehension, who? Could not find her. I don't know if you would say like the fractured storytelling and writing style is something that you see a lot in from Irish authors. It was a very difficult style to get used to. It required a lot of patience. It reminded me of Split Tooth, which is one of my favorite books, and Only Revolutions, which is one of my least favorite books. It's very parsed. It reads This room smells of chalk, smells bad to me. Go on. Jesus. Loads of people. Strangers coming, going here. I see in this room rolling blackboards is a new thing. But grills on windows is a what does that mean? I don't. Never seen that before. Ha. A wicked city I have come to, so all kind of things must go on. I know. I had to read this over the entire week. It's also just a lot of sexual violence and abuse. We're following this woman through various points in her life, and it starts when she's very young. She's experiencing trauma, and I think the writing style reflects like her perspective and not like really being able to express herself or understand the world around her. And the writing style doesn't change, and I think I kind of expected it to become more, I guess, understandable, but that's just the style throughout it. I'll show you how kind of dense it looks. There's not a lot of reprieve. It's dense paragraphs, and much like normal people, it has dialogue just inside the text without kind of introducing itself as dialogue. Is that common with books from Ireland? I don't know. It's very chaotic, and I found it an interesting reading experience. It's harrowing. It's hard to accept that this is what has happened to her and the choices that she's continuing to make. But you can definitely understand where she's coming from. I think reading from this perspective of a complex, flawed and harmed individual, it's difficult and it's important to be confronted with it. Oh, the blurb on the back says it's written a stream of consciousness with an Irish lilt. Interesting. I'm happy to have read it. It's something I wouldn't have picked up in any other context probably. It was difficult to read, and the synopsis in here is very different than the one that I read, and I would be weary to recommend this broadly to anybody, the same way that I feel about Split Tooth. I know there's an audience for it. I don't know how to recommend it properly. For each of my failed videos, I have a stack of books that I was supposed to read for that video. Occasionally, I will hold on to these unsolicited books. So the books that I have sitting in my closet were 7 Days by Patrick Senecal. This was such an interesting time as I work in marketing to watch how different brands and companies marketed themselves and the unique things that they were doing. And there was a publisher doing personalized recommendations on Twitter, and I got recommended The Water Cure. You would be correct to assume that I give my canceled videos like 5 stars. I obviously love getting to take the opportunity to 1, talk through my creative process, and 2, right my wrongs. Like this was the original righting my wrong situation. Books that I read for this video, there were hits, there were misses. It's funny because looking back on the footage, I realized that actually 2 of these books were for a canceled video I haven't even talked about, and that was the Booker Prize nominees. I had originally planned to read both of these in the year that they came out for this prize related video. I didn't end up following through with that video, but in the canceled video, I read The Long Take because it was sent to me. And I've since read like The Mars Room and didn't love it. And now here we are, knocking 2 more off that list. So The Water Cure was also for getting a book custom recommended to me on Twitter from Random House because I was looking for certain things. They gave a recommendation. I started in on it yesterday, and it's very strange. It says bodies must be controlled in order to be safe. Suffering will prepare you for the worst. And then it says it's a feminist revenge fantasy about 3 sisters raised on an isolated island to fear men. So their father has died, and now men have infiltrated the island. There's very weird things going on with what the water cure means itself and the women who come to the island looking for healing. I have no doubt I'll finish this today. And then I'm also starting in on 7 Days. And this quick blurb talks about how it's a monster who becomes a victim and a victim who becomes a monster. I think this is also a revenge story where someone's child has died and they spend 7 days enacting their revenge. Okay. Did I like it? Absolutely not. Do I have anything remotely intelligent to say about it? Absolutely not. I don't really know how to sum up my thoughts on this. It refers to itself as a feminist book. It's not. It refers to itself as a dystopian. It's not. It is a relatively atmospheric, ethereal. Really disliked the writing, just generally, the way that sentences were formed. And somehow, of course, I managed to read another culty book. It's not about a cult, but it's very culty. I would say it's about the long-term effects of like isolation, only being with a certain amount of people, a lack of like understanding about the rest of the world, the impact that that has on you throughout your life. There was a little kind of like reveal at the end that I think was supposed to do something for the reader. Hated learning that there was an assumption that I made or was led to believe that was incorrect, and just makes me think very strangely about the girls, the three sisters in this story. Just don't think that things are explained and explored in a way that you could categorize this the way that I've seen it categorized. Now, obviously, with this being an award-winning book, like anything that I have to say about it is wrong, you know, from educated persons who like understand what the book is doing. And I'm not going to be the one to come on the internet and say like, this is objectively a 1-star. But it just really was not for me. It reminded me, not in plot, but like my feelings as I was reading The Virgin Suicides or Cherish Farah. There's this intentional uneasiness that often lands for me. In this selection of books, it really didn't. I know I barely covered the plot. Like, I don't know how to sum up what this book even was. It's about girls on an island being protected. There's certain sexual tension between people. There's certain psychological manipulation. I just didn't get it. I'm happy for anybody who did. I'm gonna move on to 7 Days now. Okay, I'm gonna update you properly tomorrow, but I'm 30 pages in and I'm uncomfortable. I wonder if it's maybe the translation. This is an author from Quebec and it was translated from French to English by 2 translators, which I don't think I've ever seen before. So maybe it's the translation that's making it feel cold, or the fact that it's written in 3rd person. I'm assuming that's because we're gonna get from other, like, not POVs, but we're gonna follow other characters besides this man whose daughter has been brutally murdered and R-worded, and it goes into detail how her body was found and him thinking about what happened to her. It's reminding me a bit of Jar of Hearts, the feelings that I had reading that. But yeah, him and his wife find out that she's dead, and the first thing that his wife says is, "I want you to make love to me." And then a couple days later, they got a phone call saying that the murderer was found, which up until this point, he goes, I hadn't even considered who had murdered, brutally R-worded my 7-year-old daughter in the woods. But anyway, the police call and they say they found him. And again, the first thing that she says is, Bruno, we have to have another child. And then after a pause, as quickly as possible. Obviously, like, the way that a character behaves isn't going to make or break a book for me. I don't have to understand where a character is coming from in order to enjoy the book. So, like, obviously, these are some weird reactions. Everybody deals with grief differently. But, like, huh? Like, why is that even... Like, why is that what you're... Why? Why would you write that? That's so weird. Like, can she not just be, like, crying and missing her daughter? Like, why did you make them... Why did you make that into a sex scene? Good morning. It's another day. I'm just getting ready. Olivia is starting reading sprints in about 5 minutes and I'm not having a good time with my book. I'm 114 pages in though. It's a pretty like quick read. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna commit to reading the book throughout Olivia's sprints. And if I'm not done by the time she's done, I'm just gonna skip to the end and find out like the reveal. Because I'm assuming there is gonna be a reveal and that's why people have been recommending it to me, because right now I'm just reading about torture and it's not interesting. I feel like I do enjoy the idea of a countdown. So like it is interesting that he's talking to the police and he's like, in 7 days, I'm gonna turn myself in and he's gonna be dead. And like, we don't know what's gonna happen in those 7 days. We're also, don't worry, it's in the synopsis, but we're following from the perspective of the detective who's like trying to find him, because he's obviously taken the man who's responsible into like captivity. And I'm just hoping from here, like something interesting or different starts to happen, or that the twist is good, at least if there is one. I definitely need more mystery in my thrillers. I'm down to DNF. I have no issues with DNFing, but if there's gonna be a payoff, I want to enjoy it. So this was actually sent to me originally in these really cool marketing packages that Simon & Schuster Canada sent. They were like wrapped up in newspaper that implied the plot, and they were really fun to unwrap and unbox in various hauls. And I remember when I unboxed this, people were like, you have to read. I don't even know if it was this specific book. That's what I'm thinking back on now. Like, maybe people were just excited about this author because I know he's written so many things, he's had adaptations, and perhaps it wasn't this specific book because I just talked about perhaps DNFing it and people are saying that it actually wasn't that good. So I don't know what side you're on, but also, like, what is this cover? Like, what is this supposed to even be? It doesn't matter. Off to the reading sprints.
I want to know what book it is.
I think it's 7 Days. It's the one she posted on Instagram, I think.
Was that a romance?
Not 7 Days in June.
Oh, 7 days for what? Murder?
We've got 10 minutes left and 10 pages to go. The last 10 pages, if something happens, it could take it from a 1 star to a 2 star. So let's hope for that. Terrible book. Okay, it very much felt like a CSI episode, but like if this had an audiobook, which it doesn't, would have made it faster to get through if it did. It would have been like 7 hours ish, and that's too long. That's like a movie. Not enough happened that this should have been 300 and something pages. 7-hour experience. It felt like an episode of Criminal Minds. It would have made a fine episode of Criminal Minds, because if it was a TV show, it would have had fade to black moments instead of just the same repetitive scenes over and over again. Like literally hearing about the dissection of a living man's genitals, and then also reliving that multiple times, thinking about it, wanting to do it, and then also like the torture of animals and children. And it's not that I think the book is wrong for including certain things. Like, I read violent books all the time. It's just like, what's the purpose of it, and why so many scenes, and why for so long when it doesn't add to anything? Like, you get the point of the book 50 pages in. It's one about like how humanity has violent tendencies, you know, laying dormant, and there's just something that triggers them for some people. And also, I think the point of reading so much detail is that like this man's child was killed, and you need to confront the evils of humanity because that's what he had to do. I get it, but I also think that if I'm gonna read something like that, I would prefer it to be short, especially if the constant scenes aren't going to add anything to the plot. I can read a super gratuitously violent book if it's like 100 pages and I'm like, oh, that was like disgusting, and like how fucked up is the world. But for 300 pages where nothing else happens, no. It's also just not a well-written book. Every single page was about like him drinking beer, him sitting, thinking, pondering, and then putting on a disguise, taking off his disguise, walking around thinking, do I need a disguise in this situation? Taking off his disguise. Then people are like, maybe he's wearing a disguise. Hey ma'am at the gas station, have you seen a man in a disguise? If you know any other books by this author that you think I would enjoy, I'm totally down to give it another go. I know that I hated this, but people really love his work. He's an international bestseller, so this might just be a flop. Or if they're all like this, I would love to know. I'm gonna go pick up Liam. I have done nothing with my day. We're gonna walk to the beach. We're gonna have a nice chill afternoon, and I'm gonna read something fun at the lake. That's my plan. First I just picked up this because it's the first book, and I was like, obviously this is the one I should read. But then I picked up a couple more because I recognized the covers. Then just like a week ago, I found this one, and this one I actually remember reading. We're wearing our new backpack chairs. Look at our peaceful little spot. And in my little pocket, oh, that's a pillow. In a pocket back here, I have my book. There she is. Oh. This one's funny because it's about Sabrina and her dad, and it takes place during Father's Day, and the book opens with her going, "It's the middle of June. Nothing ever happens in June." And like, it's the middle of June. Nothing ever happens in June. Whee! It probably goes without saying that my childhood favorites vlogs are my favorite. Like, I don't feel like there's any redemption that I really need to make. And I can't remember if I rated the other Sabrina book, but I guess this one would get like 5 stars. Not only is it about a game, so it's got Jumanji vibes. She is playing this board game with her dad, and the things that are happening in the game happen in real life. So like, she rolls the dice and loses her magic in the game, and then she's actually losing her magic. I don't know what he's doing. And so she has to go and learn her lesson throughout the book. Something that I like about the Sabrina books, and I guess the show, is that she doesn't always rely on her powers. So she tries to get through things without using magic, and that's like an important lesson, I think. And then not only was it the board game, but she also ends up in space. Like, she travels to Saturn's rings without knowing where she's being transported to. So it was fun, it was silly. We had a little bit of Harvey. I always think it's impressive how books based on TV shows that aren't like the episode themselves, how they smartly reference other episodes. So it's like, oh, I turned myself into this creature, and I think about that one time that I turned myself into this creature and learned this lesson. So it like talks about episodes you probably have seen. And as far as books, you know, in this age range with these topics, it was as good as it can be. So 5 stars for nostalgia. Have I read it before? I do think so, because the point of my reread series is to be rereading things. I at least know for a fact that I owned it because this cover is very nostalgic for me, and it was a good time. Let's move on to the next video. Who better to take recommendations from than all of the booktubers who read most similarly to me, who just put up their favorites videos for the year.
Red, white, and royal blue.
I knew it. It's now officially on my TBR because it's been in 2 people's lists.
A heart in a body in the world. Nope. A heart in a body in the world.
Weird. I just hauled that.
This is Hollow Kingdom by Kira James Buxton.
I have read 5 of the books. 3 of them were in my top 10 of the year as well. I really want to hit everything that I like to read, and I can hit all of those things and read from all 5 of these people with 6 books. So I would give this video concept a 10 out of 10. Clearly I love it, but this specific time that I did it, the first time I ever did it, execution, I mean, an 8 out of 10. I thought it was good. I picked a couple wrong books, but the vlog itself was fine. The books I actually read, taking their rating into account, then the video gets like a 2 out of 10. I read 6 books total. These 2 I enjoyed, the other 4 I didn't. In fact, they were some of my lowest rated books of the year. And I actually feel like I've already redeemed myself in multiple other videos, iterations of this video itself. I've read other favorites from Natasha. They've become favorites of mine. Things in her favorites videos have ended up in my favorites videos since. All is well. And there was a reason for me picking romance. I did want a varied amount of genres, besides the fact that I just wanted to explore, like, can I love romance? I ended up having 2 horror, 1 thriller, and 1 YA contemporary already in there. I don't think I even realized that this was YA contemporary, but I didn't pick certain things off of her list because I felt like I already had those genres. I would say me and Natasha's reading taste when it comes to weird books, we match up about 70% of the time, but our ratings of contemporary, we match up 95% of the time. Truly, the amount of books that she and I have both loved and like read because of each other in this realistic fiction, mostly YA genre, there's a lot. So this is just objectively like, I can't see any reason this wouldn't be 4 or 5 stars by the end, knowing the things that she appreciates in a book and how they match up with my feelings. This is about a girl who's running across the country. something happened to her, or something is about to happen. I haven't read this full thing, but I started it. And I think the point is, you don't know what happened. You don't know what her goal is and where she's going until the end of the book. But you have a general sense of like, something bad happened to her. She's a teenage girl. There are many things that pop into mind, traumatic experiences that could have gone down, and she's hinting at it throughout the book. But her running is like an escape thing. It's her gaining like some media attention, and I'm sure she's going to learn things about herself and come to some realizations on this cross-country run. The weird book that I'm also going to start, I think this is more risky. When it comes to our weird taste, we both really liked The Seep and Tender as the Flesh, Addie LaRue, but we didn't agree on our thoughts on like The Hike or The Regrets. I also don't know if I like books from the perspective of birds. Have I ever read something like this? I'm a little over halfway through. This is a very readable book, though it's a little bit repetitive. She's running and she's having just like thoughts and memories regardless of what happened to her and what she's dealing with. Her running and her confronting her past and what she went through is like, it's the same internal healing that a lot of people have to go through when something traumatic takes place. Though it deals with tough stuff, and I know there's going to be a lot of like different content warnings, especially by the end, I feel like it's kind of a safe experience in that you're not reading people who are, how do I describe it? It's not like she's coming into contact with people who support her and don't support her. Like, this is an after the fact kind of experience, countrywide awareness that she's been through something, and everywhere she goes and she's being like invited into people's, you know, RVs, going through different cities, and there's people like cheering her on. She's not dealing with people who like don't believe her or think that she's to blame for something. She's not dealing with that. She's dealing with it internally. So I think like her running, it's partially about her like accomplishing something and feeling powerful that she is in charge. But it's also like kind of a punishment to herself because she feels guilt for something that happened. Okay, I finished it. I feel like this protagonist is gonna be, or has been already, pretty relatable. It's pretty relevant to a lot of conversations going on right now, and I mean have been for so long, about men and violence. And it touches on society and culture, but it's more so just her being told not to blame herself, as she shouldn't, for the decisions of another person. She has such a fantastic support system, and I really love the lens that this book looked through with her situation and the overall messaging behind everything. The rating itself isn't the important part, whether it's like a 4 or a 5. It's like, do I wish that I had read this in the video that I was supposed to? The answer is yes. Do I feel like I've righted my wrong? Yes. I'm pretty emotionally taxed at this point, but I want to read something else. And I don't know the tone of Hollow Kingdom, but I hope it's more fun than heartbreaking. I'll touch base with you a couple chapters in just to let you know like the vibes. So I'm making dinner. I'm listening to the audiobook. I think I need to switch to it physically because I guess, so the crow shit turd is facing the apocalypse, and he needs to maybe save humanity, but he's also just like talking about his life and whatever. And then there's other perspectives from other animals. I don't know how many there are going to be, but we just got the perspective of a poodle, and the way that the narrator did that chapter, I don't like that. I'm really glad that the first book was a win, because this was not. There's just something about reading books from the perspective of like non-human entities and their commentary on humanity that is often far too heavy-handed and drawn out, that it's just like, it's too much for me to read. Humans are terrible, the world is terrible, like whether you're glamorizing, glorifying being a human, or you're critiquing humanity, like The takeaway message is always the same at the end, and it always ends up being like a 2.5 or 3 star from me. I'm not mad to have read this book because it just gets me more and more in tune with my reading taste and will definitely like guide me in future things that I plan to pick up. Not a lot really went on in here. I didn't like the explanation of the apocalypse. There's a sequel that I obviously won't be picking up, but I think it's good that there's a sequel to like continue with the train of thought that the end of the book was going for. I also really didn't like a certain thing that happened at the end, and I wasn't expecting it from this type of like fun, witty, silly book. So for me, the tone was just a little off. The pace was a little off. It has a pretty high Goodreads rating. It obviously has a sequel, so it is successful. People enjoy it. I will try to understand those people. This one was not for me. I didn't right or wrong because I gave it the same rating that I gave the romance books I read, but that's okay. Moving on to the next. And my goal was to read those 10. The Mother-in-Law, which I think I've seen. The Chain, which I've seen, but I don't know what it is. On the Line is a woman informing Rachel that she has Kylie bound and gagged in her back seat, and the only way Rachel will ever see her again is if she pays a ransom. And Kidnaps Another Child. All 4 books I've already read. Made the top 10. And I need to read 6 books. The 5 that didn't make it are right here. My Goodreads videos are some of my favorite because I read so many books that I probably wouldn't pick up, even though it's always a mixed bag of things I love and things I don't. The only thing that I like regret about them is not being able to read the entire list of 20 nominees, which is just not realistic for anyone, especially if I want to put the video up in the time frame that I've allotted. So I do have The Chain. I'm gonna start this. I picked up, my library didn't have the audiobook. Well, it has the audiobook, but it's in 7 discs. I've never done this before. And the only thing that I have to play these, I think, is my PlayStation, but I don't even know how to make that work. But anyway, I was supposed to stay home, edit this video, listen to my audiobook, but I just had inspiration for a video. So since I don't like to plan my videos or know what I'm reading before I start filming, I just need to go out and see if I can make this video work before I officially commit to it. So I'm gonna be going between a couple different thrift stores and towns today, and so I needed to get the audiobook again, but through like an actual paying means. So I literally today got a new credit on Libro.fm and I just spent it immediately on The Chain. So I now have 3 versions of this book, and it better be good. I think my favorite thing about the Goodreads video is that just making it to begin with made other people make it. I feel like when I do videos that no one has done before, I've never seen anyone do before, people will always like, which is so kind, ask permission or say like, well, I can't make this video because you've made it, or can I make a video? Can I do a spin-off of this? And a big thing for me about making content is I make content that I want to watch. So like, I wanted people to start making videos about all the Goodreads nominees. So I did it. And then other people did it and continue to do it every year now, and it's always so fun to watch. This is about a chain of events where a mother's child is going to die unless she kills another child, essentially. What else is gonna go on? I have no idea, but I'll check in with you when I get home. I'm halfway through The Chain. I'm pretty obsessed with it. It was getting really stressful for a while, which was okay, because what's interesting about this is like, I've read a lot of mystery and thriller books that have to do with murdering children, kidnapping children, whatever. And this one, like, it's about the same stuff, but we're from like the perspective of very reluctant captors. So they're not like torturing, hurting the children. They don't have ill intent. In order to save their child, they have to kidnap another child. But that child's gonna be just fine, and they actually have to protect that child in order for the chain to continue. So you're following someone kidnapping a child. It's stressful, like following them as they're trying to figure that out, but it also feels like a little bit safe to read. And now everything that I've predicted is gonna happen, that you assume is going to happen in the story, has happened, but there's still half a book to go. So like, what's gonna happen? Okay, I finished The Chain. I had a good time. Overall, it's a 4-star. The first half was a 5-star. The second half was a 3-star. There are some things that I didn't love. There were some twists and turns, but like, I wanted a little bit more from it. But it was no doubt fun and fast-paced, and I would have appreciated reading this in the video that I should have, because I read a lot of 1 and 2 stars in that video. And with that, I have read 10 books. Though I rated some things highly, I don't look at this stack and like there's nothing here that really changed my life, which is a bit of a bummer because I read so many books. I rated so many wrongs, but we really had a range of 1 star to 5 star. And I think that's pretty cool. Got some things off of my TBR that have been there for a while. Things that, honestly, this was just more so a vlog for me. To just feel like I accomplished something. Have been thinking about these books, some of them for years, and how I should read them. And now I finally have. No new standout favorites of all time, but some good solid books. The vlog is over. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon. I post twice a week, did you know? Wednesdays and weekends. See you next time, bye!